You cannot change your life if you keep holding on to useless habits. There's one habit I see many people fall into: emotional dumping. Whenever faced with difficulties, instead of confronting them and finding a solution, they choose to offload everything onto others, seeking empathy and sharing every time they feel exhausted. But the truth is, this habit not only wastes energy, but also undermines your potential. Think about this. Every time you share your dissatisfaction, you are sending a message to your own brain. The brain doesn't distinguish between good and bad. It just listens and believes what you say. If you constantly complain about life, about the injustices, your brain will begin to adjust how you perceive the world. The world will no longer be a place full of opportunities, but just a series of difficulties and failures. You will find yourself trapped in a vicious cycle. This isn't because you lack the ability to succeed, but because you have turned minor problems into insurmountable obstacles. That's a huge mistake. You're making your problems bigger than they really are. Every time you blame or share your helplessness, you are building a version of yourself that you don't want. Instead of rising, you push yourself down. You're not trying to overcome, but creating a story of failure. You are not what you are going through, but if you continue to tell your story this way, it will be how others see you. And most importantly, it will be how you perceive yourself. Think again. If you keep pouring your emotions out to others, aren't you asking them to solve your problems for you? They cannot do that. What do you think if you stop sharing everything with others and start holding back, perceiving and acting on every situation in your own way? The truth is, everyone has their own issues. They don't have time to solve all your troubles. They can listen, but they can't handle it for you. How you behave will determine how others perceive you. If you constantly share your failures, you're building a negative image, one that can never move forward. They will see you as someone always beaten down by life, someone who can't stand up on their own. That's why you need to change this habit immediately. Every time you dump emotions, you are weakening yourself. Why is that? Because you're allowing negativity to invade every corner of your mind. Instead of turning hardships into motivation to rise, you're creating a cycle of weakness. Once you fall into this spiral, you become dependent on others' empathy instead of solving your problems yourself. That's when you lose your true strength and potential. If you want to succeed, you must focus on action, not on blaming. Instead of talking about what's wrong, start changing it. You cannot change the past, but you can control your future. Every day is a new opportunity to start over. And when you stop dumping emotions, you'll realize you can do more than you think. Growth comes from small actions, from decisions you make every day. Don't wait for someone else to act for you. Don't look for empathy from those around you. They may support you, but change and growth entirely depend on you. I'm not saying you should become cold or indifferent. You can still share and seek support when needed. But remember, every time you unload your emotions, you're weakening your own strength. Keep that energy to focus on actions instead of continuing to run in circles with stories of helplessness and failure. Start talking about what you will do to improve the situation and show people that you don't just talk, but act. When you focus on solutions instead of problems, you will create real changes in your life. Ultimately, to solve a problem, you must act. Nothing replaces action. You can complain all day, but in the end, the only thing that will move you forward is actual action. Let your actions speak for themselves instead of just stopping at words. Your brain is like a GPS. Imagine your brain as a super powerful GPS. It doesn't distinguish between good or bad. It simply executes whatever you program into it. And here's the most important thing you need to understand. If you constantly program your brain with negative thoughts, feelings of helplessness and failure, your brain will do nothing but lead you to those results. It will believe what you say and begin filtering everything around you through that lens. The more you repeat negative thoughts, the easier it becomes for it to guide you down that path. Every day, you program your brain, whether you're aware of it or not. Your brain doesn't care whether you're saying things that are beneficial or harmful to you. It just listens and believes what you say. If you constantly say, "Life is so hard," or "I never get lucky," your brain will create a world where all those things are true. It will look for every piece of evidence in your environment to reinforce that belief. You may not realize it, but when you give yourself those negative thoughts, you're asking your brain to find ways to make them come true. This may sound simple, but it's incredibly important. Your brain isn't like a smart computer where you can just point to a goal and it instantly starts working toward it. Your brain works based on what you program into it. And if you only focus on problems, difficulties, and failure, you'll never see the opportunities or steps you need to succeed. How you program your brain doesn't just affect the outcomes you get, but also how you face the world. When you think everything will never be okay, you'll find evidence to support that. You'll see problems everywhere, in every small detail of life. And when you can't break free from that loop, you'll lose the opportunity for change. So, how do you change? The answer is simple. You need to change how you program your brain. If you want to achieve something great, you must start telling yourself that you can do it. You need to reprogram your brain to look for opportunities instead of failures. Instead of saying, I can't do it, try saying, I'll figure out a way to do it. Instead of saying, life is so hard, say, I can face and overcome any challenge. Every time you change a thought like that, you'll begin reprogramming your brain, and gradually it will start looking for opportunities, solutions, instead of just seeing the difficulties. This isn't about creating a miracle or trying to avoid challenges. Life will always have obstacles. But if you can change how you view those obstacles, you'll overcome them more easily. You can't control everything in life, but you can control how your brain reacts to it. I'm not saying you have to be perfect, never feeling helpless. In fact, I go through difficult times too and feel like I can't do anything. But that's not what matters. What matters is not letting those negative thoughts control you. You need to ask yourself, what can I do to change this? And when you ask yourself that question, your brain will start finding solutions instead of just dwelling on the problem. Start changing the programming of your brain today. Don't let negative thoughts dominate. Don't let your brain lead you down paths that have already been pre-programmed. Instead, reprogram it to lead you to where you want to go. Don't let challenges become excuses for giving up. Let them be the motivation to move forward. At this moment, you may feel like nothing has changed yet. But as long as you start changing how you program your brain, everything will begin to change from the inside. And once you change from the inside, the outside world will change too. Remember that your brain is the most powerful tool you have, and you can program it however you want. Once you decide, it will start working for you. There is a big misunderstanding about keeping silent. Many people think that if you don't say anything, you are stronger. They believe that if you don't share your emotions or let others know what you're going through, you will appear as if you have control over your life. However, the truth is far from that. Sometimes keeping silent is how you imprison yourself. You don't always have to remain silent to show strength. Sometimes true strength comes from daring to speak up. Silence doesn't mean you're strong. Silence can be avoidance, a way to escape reality. Silence can be a way to deny your emotions, a way to avoid facing what you truly feel. And when you don't face yourself, you can't solve the problem. You may hide those emotions for a while, but eventually they will explode. And when they do, you won't be able to control them anymore. Sometimes what you really need to do is acknowledge your emotions and share them. Your emotions are not weakness. They are a natural part of human nature. Keeping everything inside doesn't make you stronger. It just makes you tired and stressed. Those emotions need to be released so you can continue to grow. Silence is sometimes just deceiving yourself. You're postponing facing what you need to face. I've seen many people limit themselves just because they are afraid to speak up about how they feel. They're afraid of being judged, misunderstood, or getting hurt. But no one can understand you if you don't share. When you stay silent, you're creating an invisible distance between yourself and others. Every relationship, whether with colleagues or family, requires communication. And communication isn't just talking about good things. It's also sharing the difficulties and worries you're facing. Keeping silent is not a way to avoid challenges. You can't ignore problems just because you don't talk about them. If you don't speak up, you will never know the valuable ideas or advice others might offer. The more silent you are, the fewer opportunities you have to change. Sometimes you need to share in order to create change. Remember that true strength doesn't come from silence, it comes from action. Don't wait for the perfect moment to speak up. Opportunities never wait for you, and if you don't share what you're thinking, what you're feeling, you'll miss the chance to change things. You have to speak up to create change. If you want to move forward, you need to act, and action includes sharing what you're going through. Silence is sometimes necessary for reflection, but if you're too silent, you'll trap yourself in the box you've created. Things won't change if you don't change how you face them, and if you don't speak up, you'll never know the strength that comes from other stories, other perspectives. You'll be limited by your own thoughts. To achieve great accomplishments, you can't just stay silent. You need to share your vision, share your goals, and even share the challenges you're facing. Successful people are not those who keep silent about their problems. They are the ones who know when to share and when to act. And they understand that sharing not only helps themselves, but can also help others. Silence is not always strength. Sometimes strength comes from daring to speak, daring to face yourself, and daring to change. When you share, you're not only helping yourself, but also creating an opportunity for others to help you. Never think you have to overcome every challenge on your own. Remember, in this world, no one can succeed alone. All success comes from communication, connection, and sharing. Start speaking up and create opportunities to grow. The truth is, you cannot continue living in the past and expect the future to be different. This is something many people don't realize. You can't just sit there repeating sad stories, past failures, and wait for a miracle to happen. If you do this, you're only holding on to the past and hindering yourself from moving forward. The sad stories won't change if you just keep repeating them without taking action to change. I've met many people who talk about the difficulties and failures they've experienced but never look at the solutions. They focus only on the pain, the problems, and the feelings of helplessness they're facing. And that just keeps them feeling stuck, unable to move forward. If you want change, you can't keep living in those sad stories. What has happened is the past. The important thing is to think about what you can do now and in the future to change your life. We all know life is not always easy. Everyone has problems, everyone has challenges to face. But what matters is what you do when faced with those problems. Will you hold on to your sadness and satisfy yourself with stories of helplessness? Or will you stand up and find a way to solve it? You can't change your life by just telling sad stories over and over. To change, you must begin to act. Repetitively telling sad stories won't help you move forward. Instead of continuing to talk about the problem, focus on how to solve it. Focus on action, not just repeating negative emotions. Every time you talk about sad stories, you're not only wasting your energy, but also dragging yourself down. Those sad stories, those negative emotions won't help you move forward. They only keep you stuck where you were, and if you keep doing this, you will never make progress. Try changing how you view those problems. Don't see them as obstacles you can't overcome. Instead, see them as opportunities to learn, to grow. Only when you change your perspective can you change how you act. If you only focus on the difficulties without seeing the opportunities, you'll never find an escape. But if you start seeing every problem as a chance to challenge yourself and grow, you'll find that those difficulties really can't stop you. Think about the most successful people in history, the ones who changed the world. They are not people who didn't experience failure. They are not people who never went through suffering. In fact, they went through many difficulties and failures, but they didn't let those failures define them. They didn't live in the past. They didn't keep telling the story of their failures. Instead, they learned from their mistakes and kept moving forward towards their goals. Repeating sad stories only makes you a victim of yourself. When you keep talking about your failures, you're reinforcing the belief that you can't overcome them. And when you believe that, you'll never change anything. If you want progress, you must stop living in the past, stop repeating the story of your failures, and start building a new story about what you can do. Life won't change if you don't change the way you see it. You can continue living in sadness and repeating old stories, or you can accept that those things are in the past and start from today. Everything in life can change if you're determined and take action. You can change your path, you can change your future, but only if you stop repeating sad stories and start focusing on what you can do to change. In fact, every time you tell the sad story, you're reminding yourself that you can't change anything. But every time you decide to move past that story and focus on solutions, You're affirming that you can change your life. Stop repeating the sadness and start writing your new story, a story of change, of solid steps toward the future. Your life is not a series of continuous failures. You were not born to live in a state of helplessness and wait for everything to change without taking action. It's time for you to realize that it is you and not anyone else who decides your life. You cannot keep following negative thoughts and expect a different result. If you don't change the way you think and act, you will remain stuck in this loop. When I started with SpaceX, people laughed at me. How can you send a rocket into space and make it return to Earth? They called me crazy, impossible. But I didn't let them shape me. I didn't allow those negative words to hold me back. In fact, I learned something crucial. If you want to change the world, you must go against the crowd, face the mockery, confront your fears, and still move forward. And you need to do the same in your personal life. Life is not something you can let pass meaninglessly. You are not a puppet controlled by everything around you. Every time you let negative thoughts, fear, or lack of confidence control you, you're giving up your autonomy. You weren't born to passively endure life. You were born to create change, to face and overcome all challenges. Look at the most successful people. They are not people who never faced difficulties. They are not people who never felt failure. They are simply people who didn't let those difficulties and failures define their lives. They chose to stand up, learn from mistakes, and keep acting. If you want to move forward, you must do the same. Don't let challenges stop you. Turn them into motivation, into lessons that help you grow. You will never move forward if you keep letting yourself get stuck in the negative loop. These negative thoughts will create a cycle you can't escape. Every time you fall into that thinking, you remind yourself that you can't do it. But the reality is you can absolutely do it. You just need to realize that this loop can only be broken when you decide to change. When you change how you perceive problems and react to life, you'll see everything begin to change. We all have unlimited potential, but that potential can only be unlocked when you dare to step out of your comfort zone, face difficult things, and learn how to overcome them. If you keep living with negative thoughts, you'll never see your true potential. Remember that every step, every action, no matter how small, is a step forward. Never think it's too late to change. As long as you're alive, you have the opportunity. But this negative loop is not where you were born to be. You were born to do great things. Change how you think, how you act, and how you face life. Don't let negativity hold you back. Let it propel you further. When you change, everything around you will change. If you want to change your life, start with your thoughts. Stop immediately if you start thinking you can't do it or that you don't deserve success. Instead, ask yourself, what can I do right now to change the situation? And when you begin to act, everything will start to change. That's how you break free from the negative loop and move forward. Finally, never forget that you have the power to control your life. Don't let circumstances, challenges, or negative voices define who you are. You are the one who decides that. Live with clear goals, act with purpose, and always move forward, because you were not born to live in this negative loop. You were born to change the world, to do great things, and that's what you must do. You may have all the creative ideas, great plans, and long-term vision, but if you don't take action, all of those are just dreams that will never come true. Action is the only thing that can turn abstract concepts into concrete results. When I started with SpaceX, no one believed that we could achieve what we did, but we didn't let doubts or difficulties stop us. We didn't stand still. We didn't wait for perfection. We act, and that is the only way to achieve the impossible. Action is not something you do when everything is ready. It's what you need to do as soon as you have a goal. There is no time to wait. You can plan, you can think, but if you don't act immediately, you'll fall into perpetual procrastination. Success is not something you wait for. It's something you create through continuous, relentless action. Don't let yourself get caught up in resultless thoughts. Every time you procrastinate, you're losing opportunities. That's what I've learned throughout my journey. SpaceX, Tesla, or any project I've started began with small steps, but they were all executed with action. Change comes from action. No one becomes successful just by thinking about what they will do. You have to start doing, you have to experiment, you have to take risks. Of course, you will face failure, but failure is not something to fear. Failure is just part of the learning process. What matters is whether you act, whether you dare to face challenges and keep moving forward. I'm not saying action is everything. You need strategy, you need a clear plan, but strategy is just theory until you start implementing it. No one can predict everything. No one can create the perfect plan from the start. We can only do better with each action, with each experiment. When you start doing, you learn from mistakes, from real feedback, and from there you adjust your strategy. This is the process of continuous improvement. Action also has another important characteristic. It creates momentum. When you start acting, you're not just working, you're creating momentum to keep going. Every step, no matter how small, creates a sense of progress. That's why so many people fail right at the beginning. They never start. They just sit there thinking and planning. But you need to start right now. Even if your plan isn't perfect, even if you don't have all the answers, as long as you start acting, you'll automatically create momentum and start moving forward. One of the reasons I can keep pursuing my crazy projects is because I understand that action is the greatest source of motivation. Action helps me overcome difficulties, helps me get through uncertainty. When you act, you're not just moving toward your goal, you're creating change. And when you see those small changes, you'll realize you can keep going further. You'll feel more confident, you'll learn more, and you'll get closer to what you want to achieve. Not every action is successful immediately. That's the truth. But every time you act, you're making yourself stronger, you're learning more, and you're getting one step closer to your goal. One of the reasons people don't achieve success is because they fear failure. They fear that their actions won't yield the desired results. But I can tell you this, no success comes without failure. Failure is part of the process. The important thing is that you don't give up. When you act, you'll see that failure is just another step on the path to success. Just like when I started building SpaceX or Tesla, none of us knew for sure that we would succeed. But we couldn't know unless we acted. We couldn't just sit there waiting for a miracle to happen. Everything had to be done. It had to be tested. And if it didn't work, we would try again. Through action, we created a new path. So what can you do to change? It's simple. Start acting now. Don't wait for everything to be perfect. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Start with small steps. As long as you act, you create momentum and start heading in the right direction. Act, learn from mistakes, and keep adjusting. Only action can turn everything into reality. Life is not a parade, and you will never have anyone come to rescue you except yourself. This is an important realization you need to make right now. You cannot rely on anyone else to solve your problems or create your future. You are the only one who can truly change your life. People can help, they can encourage you, but in the end, the action and decision must come from you. I've seen many people waiting for someone to help them, waiting for a special event or miracle to completely change their lives. But I can tell you that life doesn't work that way. Big opportunities don't come by themselves. You have to actively create them. Major changes don't happen overnight, but they come from small decisions you make every day, from the steps you dare to take, even when you're uncertain. When I started with SpaceX, I didn't have big support. No one believed we could do it. People around me thought my idea was crazy, but I didn't stop trying. I didn't wait for anyone to rescue me. I didn't wait for a perfect change or massive help from someone else. I knew that if I wanted success, I had to walk on my own, fight on my own. And that's exactly what you have to do. This world is not always easy. Surely you will face challenges and difficulties you cannot foresee, but never think you can't overcome them. Don't think you need someone else to help you. You need to stand up on your own, fight on your own, and find your own solution. When you realize that only you can change your life, everything will become clearer. You don't need anyone else to change your future. You are the one who decides. You are the one in control. We live in a world where everyone has their own problems, everyone has their own burdens. You can't expect others to always be there to save you. Everyone has their own priorities, and you cannot expect them to do your work for you. In fact, the more you hope for others, the weaker you become. The more you think you need someone else to save you, the more you lose your independence, your inner strength. Remember, you don't need anyone to rescue you. You just need to act. When I built Tesla, very few people believed in our abilities. We faced a lot of skepticism, a lot of challenges, but I didn't let that stop me. In fact, those difficulties only made me more determined. If I had waited for support from the outside, Tesla would never have made it to the market. If I had relied on others to make decisions, I wouldn't have been able to create the changes we achieved. So what can you learn from this? Don't wait for salvation from the outside. Make yourself strong. Understand that only you can change your life. Don't expect someone to come and show you the way. You have to walk that path. You have to work and solve the problems. It may not be easy, but it's the only way for you to grow and mature. Life is not a parade of opportunities coming from the outside. Don't wait. Don't let opportunities pass by without acting. You have to create opportunities for yourself. You have to find a way to rise and face the challenges. Successful people are not those who wait for salvation. They are those who stand up and act to change their own world. Sure, you will feel tired at times, you will feel lost, but in those moments you need to take one more step. It's in those moments that you need to remember that you don't need anyone to rescue you. You have all the strength and ability to do that. Remember, if you want to create change, you have to start with yourself. You can't wait for someone else to change your life. You have to do it yourself. And when you start acting, you will see that all difficulties will turn into opportunities. All challenges will become stepping stones for you to go further. Be the one to save yourself. Be the one to create your future. No one else can do that for you. Only you can change your own life. Act today and create the future you want to live in. Everyone has limits, but the important thing is whether you dare to push those limits further. Success doesn't come from taking the easy path. You can't move forward if you only do what you're familiar with, if you only accept what's safe. If you truly want to move forward, you need to challenge yourself, break through the barriers you've created, and reach for things you've never dared to imagine. When I started with SpaceX, no one believed we could succeed. No one thought a private company could build a rocket, send it to space, and then bring it back to Earth. In fact, I wasn't sure we would succeed either, but I knew one thing for sure. If we didn't try, if we didn't take on the challenge, there would never be a chance to achieve it. And that's what I want you to understand. There is no great success without challenges, without taking risks. Most people like to live in their comfort zone. They choose to do what they're familiar with, avoiding uncertainty and difficulty. But if you only stop at what you know, you will never know what you can achieve. To move forward, you must step out of your comfort zone. You must face fear, overcome uncertainty, and try new things. In fact, challenging yourself is the only way to grow. You can't move forward if you stay still in your comfortable zone. What I call limits is not something you simply accept. It's something you have to face and break through. You don't wait for that limit to change on its own. You have to challenge it. Look at the progress of Tesla or SpaceX. Nothing was easy. Those were risky, challenging steps. But I've always believed that only when you face challenges can you see opportunities you never noticed before. In fact, failure is part of the process. Failures are not an end. They are opportunities to learn and move forward. Don't think that only talent can help you overcome challenges. Persistence is the key. In fact, I didn't have all the answers when I started with SpaceX or Tesla. These companies started with very few resources, many difficulties, and much skepticism. But instead of giving up, we kept challenging ourselves. We tested, failed, and tried again. Without persistence and the courage to face challenges, we wouldn't have the big steps we have today. What I want you to realize is that major change only happens when you challenge yourself. If you're not willing to change, if you're not daring to try, you'll never know how far you can go. Don't let fear or uncertainty stop you. When you embrace challenges, you're not only overcoming difficulty, but also discovering a stronger version of yourself, a better version of yourself. No one can succeed by just sitting there and waiting. You must act, face challenges, and dare to fail. Successful people are not those who have never failed. They are those who dare to challenge, dare to walk paths no one has walked, and dare to face difficulties. They know that each failure is just an opportunity to learn, and each success is the result of a journey of constantly challenging themselves When you challenge yourself, you not only change your life, but you also change how others perceive you. You're not the person who just waits for opportunities. You're the one who creates opportunities. You're not the one sitting in the dark, but the one leading, the one pioneering, the one who never stops dreaming and acting to make those dreams come true. You'll become the person everyone admires, not because of innate talent, but because you dared to challenge, dared to risk, and never gave up. Challenge yourself every day. Don't let fear or uncertainty stop you. You may not know exactly where things will go, but the important thing is that you must act. That is the only way to move forward, to grow, and to achieve things you've never imagined. When you challenge yourself, you not only change the present, but also build the future. And when you achieve what seemed impossible, you'll realize that you're stronger than any limit. Everyone has their limits, but the important thing is whether you dare to push those limits further. Success does not come from taking the easy path. You cannot move forward if you only do what you're familiar with, if you only accept what is safe. If you truly want to move forward, you need to challenge yourself. Break the barriers you've created and reach for things you've never dared to imagine. When I started with SpaceX, Tesla, or any other project, I wasn't the only one facing skepticism. I wasn't the only one dealing with financial problems, uncertainty, or difficulties in getting support from others. Every step was a challenge, and there were times I felt like I couldn't continue. But I realized something important. Everyone around me also had their own issues. They couldn't always step in and solve my problems, just as I couldn't always be the one solving theirs. This doesn't mean you can't seek help or share your feelings. I fully support having friends, colleagues, or family to support you. However, you need to understand that no one can fully comprehend what you're going through, and no one can solve everything for you except yourself. You can't offload everything onto others and expect them to carry the weight for you. They can help in part, but ultimately, you are the one who is to face the problem and figure out how to solve it. This is crucial to understand. If you don't realize that everyone around you has their own struggles, you may easily fall into resentment, feeling abandoned and alone. But when you realize that we're all fighting something, you'll see that you're not alone. You'll see that everyone has their own stories, their own challenges, and what matters is how we face them. No one has a perfect life, no one walks a smooth path throughout their life. Everyone faces challenges, and how we overcome them truly determines our success. Successful people are not those who never face difficulties. They are people who realize that life is full of challenges and they must keep moving forward despite them. Not because they don't have problems, but because they understand that they are the ones who decide how to overcome those problems. If you want to succeed, you must learn to face your problems and find ways to solve them instead of waiting for someone to help you. You must understand that no one can solve your life for you, and you can't keep waiting for others to fix the mistakes you've made. I had to learn to stand on my own. That is an important lesson I want you to realize as well. No matter how many people you share with, no matter how much help you ask for, in the end, only you can decide the direction of your life. And understanding that everyone has their own problems will help you feel less stressed when life isn't going your way. You can't expect others to have a perfect life so they can solve everything you're facing. We cannot live in a world where everyone must step in to help us. Life is yours, and you must take responsibility. You must work, you must act, and you must figure out how to solve your problems. Don't let your difficulties make you forget one important thing. You have the power to control your life. You can change the situation by taking action, by finding solutions. And you can't wait for someone else to do that for you. When you realize that we all have our own issues and difficulties, you'll easily let go of negative thoughts about life and start focusing on solving your own problems. You'll see that you're not alone and you can keep moving forward. Life is not about avoiding difficulties, it's about facing them and overcoming them. And when you do that, you'll find that you're much stronger than you think. Finally, remember that you can change your life, but you have to start with yourself. Don't wait for others to help you, don't wait for salvation. Stand up and solve your problems, because only you can do that. We all have moments when we feel like failures, when we feel unrecognized or believe that everything around us is unfair, and in those moments, a natural human response is to blame. You might blame the circumstances, others, or even yourself. But the truth is, the habit of blaming not only prevents you from solving the problem, but also makes you feel more abandoned and weaker than ever. When I started with SpaceX, Tesla, or any other project, I never expected to always receive support or recognition. There were times when everything seemed impossible to overcome. The people around me didn't trust what I was doing. But instead of blaming those who didn't believe in me or the unfavorable circumstances, I focused on solutions. I focused on action. I knew that no one could change the situation but me. And when you blame, you're handing over control to others. You're allowing external factors to dictate your life. The habit of blaming is a trap. You think that by blaming the circumstances or others, you'll feel relieved. You think it's a way to release your anger or disappointment, but in reality, it's a deception. You're not solving the problem, you're just complicating things. Blaming never changes anything, it just makes you feel more stuck and defeated. Because when you blame, you're denying your responsibility to change the situation. If you want to change your life, you must start with yourself. Don't blame the circumstances or others. You must look at what you can do right now to change the situation. Every time you blame, you're losing the opportunity to grow, to learn from your mistakes, and to change the outcome. You will always feel abandoned, always feel like you can't do anything if you live in this habit of blaming. You can't move forward if you keep looking back and blaming what has happened. In life, you can't control everything, but you can control how you respond to it. If you blame others or circumstances, you're allowing those things to control your life. But if you take responsibility, you'll have full control. You'll become the leader, not the follower. You'll be able to change the direction of your life. What matters is not what happens to you, but how you face it. In fact, when you take responsibility, not only do you make yourself stronger, but you can also help others because you've overcome the challenge. The habit of blaming also makes you lose confidence. When you blame, you're saying that you're not strong enough to change something. You're denying your own abilities. This not only hinders you from changing the situation, but also makes you feel weak and incapable of controlling your life. When you stop blaming and start taking responsibility, you'll see that you can change everything. You'll feel much stronger because you're taking control. Don't think that you can't change your life because of unfavorable circumstances. If I had thought that way, I wouldn't have created SpaceX, Tesla, or anything else I'm doing. There were times when I felt like I couldn't continue, but instead of blaming those difficulties, I chose to act. I chose to find ways to overcome and learn from every failure. And that's the only way to move forward. You can learn from mistakes, from things that didn't go as planned, and you can change it if you don't blame, but instead take responsibility and act. Remember, no one but you can change your life. You're the only one who can decide where you're going, what you're doing, and who you're becoming. The habit of blaming will only hold you back, will make you feel weak and helpless. But when you start taking responsibility, when you stop and say, "This is my problem, and I will solve it," you'll see that you can change everything. You won't feel abandoned, you'll feel stronger than ever, because you know you're in control of your life. Finally, never forget that change begins with you. Don't blame the circumstances or others. Take responsibility, act, and you'll see that you can create any change you want in your life. Everyone can recognize one thing. When you constantly talk about what's wrong, you're not only holding on to negativity, but also creating a cycle of dissatisfaction. Every time you repeat the problems, you're not just recreating negative emotions, but amplifying them. If you keep living in stories of discontent, you're only making your life worse, instead of finding ways to change the situation. When I started with SpaceX, Tesla, or any other project, I faced countless failures. No one believed we could achieve the impossible. No one thought a private company could create a rocket, send it to space, and bring it back to Earth. But I didn't stop and complain about what was working. I didn't waste time talking about the difficulties, the challenges, or the doubts. Instead, I focused on solutions. I focused on action. What you say isn't the issue, but what you do is what matters. If you just keep talking about what's wrong, you'll never have time to fix them. When you constantly focus on what's not going right, you're only creating a negative mental state. You won't be able to see opportunities. You won't find solutions because your mind is overtaken by dissatisfaction. This feeling doesn't just stagnate you, but creates an invisible pressure, making it harder to move forward. You'll feel heavy, as if a huge weight is bearing down on you, making every step harder. In reality in life, nothing is ever perfect. I know this very well. But instead of complaining about shortcomings or what's not right, I always focus on what can be improved. I know that if I kept repeating stories of failure and difficulty, I'd only complicate things further. And I'm sure you're the same. If you keep talking about problems, you'll create an invisible wall between yourself and the opportunities ahead. Remember, you can control what you say, and more importantly, you can control how you think. Every time you mention a problem, you're sending a signal to your brain, making it focus solely on that. Don't let problems become your identity. Don't let what's wrong take over you and create a life full of negative emotions. Don't let each day become a string of sad stories about things not working out. The issue is not what happens to you, but how you react to it. We can't change the past, but we can change how we perceive and act in the present. If you keep talking about failures, you'll just make them seem bigger in your mind. If you truly want to change, stop focusing on what's wrong and start focusing on solutions, on action. Every time you talk about what's wrong, you're reinforcing the belief that you can't do anything to change it. You're setting up a vicious cycle, a loop with no escape. But if you start talking about what you can do, the steps you can take, you'll create a real change. This doesn't mean you have to make everything perfect immediately, but every time you act, every time you find a way to solve a problem, you'll see progress. The issue is not that you face difficulties, but whether you dare to face them. When you face them and act, you'll realize that everything isn't as scary as you thought. Problems only truly become problems when you don't act. Don't let negativity take over your mind. Don't let stories of failure stop you from moving forward. You can change. You can break out of that negative loop and find a way to keep going. Finally, instead of talking about what's wrong, start acting to change it. Don't let stories of dissatisfaction dominate your life. Create a new story, a story of solid steps towards success. And when you do, you'll see that your life will no longer feel heavy. It will become lighter, full of energy, and focused on new opportunities. Blaming is an easy habit, a way to temporarily feel relieved without facing the problem. But the truth is, blaming never solves the problem. In fact, it makes the situation worse. Blaming keeps you stuck, unable to move forward because you're not focused on changing the situation. If you keep focusing on finding someone or something to blame, you'll miss the opportunity to change and grow. In reality, there is only one way to overcome all difficulties and challenges in life: find a solution. When I started with SpaceX, Tesla, or any other project I pursued, I never blamed difficulties, doubts, or failures. There were many times when everything seemed insurmountable, but instead of blaming external factors, I focused on solutions. No one can change the situation for you. No one can do it for you. You have to be the one in charge. You have to find a way to overcome. People often fall into the trap of blaming because it's the easiest way to feel like they're not responsible. But blaming only gives you a momentary sense of relief. It won't help you move forward or improve the situation. In fact, blaming is a waste of time and energy. You can blame all day, but in the end, you'll still have to face the problem. Instead of continuing to search for someone to blame, you should ask yourself, what can I do to change this? When I built Tesla, I couldn't blame the market, the people who didn't believe in electric cars, or the difficulties in production or limited resources. These factors were always present, but instead of blaming, I started looking for ways to solve them. I found ways to shift my mindset, produce more efficiently, and always focused on creating a product that consumers would love and use. Blaming is the way of those who don't want to take responsibility. It's the way of those who don't want to change and don't dare face the truth. If you don't dare to take responsibility, you'll never solve the problem. When you blame, you trap yourself in a vicious cycle. You can't move forward because you've confined yourself with negative thoughts about others and your circumstances. Don't let that stop you. Shifting from blaming to finding solutions is not always easy. But it's the first step to truly taking control of your life. If you want to change your life, you have to learn to recognize the problem and find a way to solve it. Instead of complaining about what's not right, ask yourself a simple question: what can I do to improve the situation? Every time you ask yourself this question, you'll begin to see clearer solutions. That's how you find your way forward. Successful people are not those who never fail. They're the ones who face difficulties, don't blame, and find ways to solve the problems. In fact, failures are important lessons. Each failure is an opportunity to learn, and only when you dare to face it can you move further. When I developed Tesla, I faced many failures, but instead of blaming external factors, I found ways to improve processes and create better products. And that's how I built a successful brand. Blaming never helps you grow. It's just a way to delay facing the problem. To truly grow and develop, you have to take responsibility for what you do. No one can take responsibility for you. You have to take control of your life, face the problem, and find a solution. Don't let external factors determine your life. Only you can decide the path you'll take. Shifting from blaming to finding solutions is an important mindset change. It's when you realize that you can control your life, that every problem can be solved as long as you find a way. Nothing is impossible, but you have to focus on solutions instead of reasons why it can't be done. Look at difficulties as opportunities to learn and grow. Don't let them be barriers. Finally, I want you to remember that nothing is impossible if you change your mindset and find solutions. Don't blame the circumstances, don't blame others. You can do it, you can change. The only thing you need to do is shift from blaming to action and solutions. And when you do that, you'll see that every problem can be overcome. In the modern world, we are often caught up in an endless race to share our emotions and thoughts. Social media, conversations, even work meetings, all encourage sharing and communication. But have you ever wondered if everything you think or feel needs to be expressed? Is it necessary to share everything you go through with the world? The truth is, not everything needs to be said. Sometimes, silence is the strength you need. When I started with SpaceX, no one thought we could succeed. There were times when I didn't share the difficulties I was facing. I didn't talk about the doubts, failures, or sleepless nights. And this wasn't because I wanted to hide or suppress my emotions. I didn't share because I knew that expressing everything would only make things heavier. And sometimes, it would cause me to lose the focus I needed. The challenges I faced at that time were mine alone, and I knew that only action could resolve them. Silence, at that time, was my way of keeping a quiet space to think and move forward, without distraction. In life, we tend to share everything because we want to be understood, to be empathized with. But not always does empathy help. In fact, too many words sometimes make the problem more complicated. You can share all your difficulties, but will it help you overcome challenges? Or are you simply amplifying the fatigue in your mind? What you share with others sometimes doesn't provide support, but instead diminishes the value of the difficulties you're facing. The more you speak, the easier it is for problems to control you. That's why I always believe that sometimes silence is a strategy. If you can stay silent, think carefully, and act, you'll create results rather than just words. I'm not saying you shouldn't communicate or share when necessary, but the key is being careful in choosing the right time and the right people to share with. Always remember, not everyone can understand or help you the way you expect, and sometimes you have to face and overcome the problem yourself. Silence doesn't mean you're weak or don't know how to express emotions. Silence is the ability to restrain yourself and focus on solutions. Silence is the strength to maintain a personal space to analyze, reflect, and act. When you share too much, you shift the focus from the solution to the problem, from action to words. And the more you speak, the more energy you lose for action. In fact, action is the determining factor for success, not complaints or explanations. I've realized that while we may feel the need to share everything, keeping thoughts and feelings to yourself sometimes helps you maintain clarity. If I shared too much about worries and difficulties, I would easily be pulled down by those emotions. Instead, I choose to focus on action, on solving the problem as efficiently as possible. That's the only way I can continue moving forward without sinking into negative thoughts. Silence also helps you build persistence and self-regulation. When you don't say everything, you learn to control yourself instead of letting emotions or circumstances control you. You will be able to focus on long-term goals instead of seeking instant relief. When you don't share everything, you're also taking time to improve, to grow, and to become the person you want to be. You won't be distracted by others' opinions, and you won't easily let yourself be swayed by external factors. Silence also allows you to respect the space of others. Everyone has their own problems, and constantly sharing everything with others can overwhelm them. Sometimes, those around you need space to solve their own issues. When you know when to remain silent, you're also learning to respect others' space and emotions. This helps you create healthier relationships with the right amount of empathy instead of a relationship full of exhausting sharing. Finally, remember that not everything needs to be said. Action and silence can bring greater results than words. Only when you focus on action, find solutions, and develop yourself can you truly change and move forward. Choose wisely when to share, and when needed, know how to keep your thoughts to yourself to stay clear and focused on long-term goals. Silence can be your strength, and when you master it, you'll see your life changing in a more positive direction. In life, we are constantly faced with countless choices every day. Some choices are small, while others carry significant consequences. However, we don't always make decisions rationally. Sometimes, due to worry, emotions, or external factors, we make decisions that we may later regret. This is why a simple but powerful question should be asked every time we face an important situation or decision. Will this help me move forward? I've had to face this question many times throughout my journey. When I started SpaceX, no one believed in my project. They called me crazy for dreaming of sending rockets into space, especially when everything was still new and difficult. But I didn't let their criticisms steer me off course. I stopped, asked myself, can I do this? And if I continue, will it help me move forward? The answer was always yes, and I kept moving forward, despite all the doubts and challenges. Sometimes we continue doing what we've always done because we don't dare stop and think about our true goals. We continue with old habits, doing what feels safe, without asking ourselves whether these actions actually help us move forward. If you don't ask yourself this question daily, you'll easily fall into the trap of procrastination and temporary satisfaction. You'll find yourself repeating old actions without knowing where you're going. And this is why you need to intentionally stop and evaluate whether everything you're doing is helping you progress. This question not only helps you assess whether your actions are right, but also helps you reconsider your long-term goals. During the process of building Tesla and SpaceX, I couldn't avoid difficulties and failures. But the important thing is that I never let those failures hold me back. Every time I encountered a challenge, I stopped and asked myself, does this help me move forward? And the answer was always yes. Failure is not the end. It's an opportunity to learn and improve. And it's those failures that led me to the successes I have today. When you ask yourself this question, you also begin to assess what you should focus on and what you can let go of. In life, you'll face many uncertainties, but you can't do everything. You can't do everything and still expect to achieve big results. You need to choose what really matters, what will bring you closer to your goals. Always remember, each choice you make can bring you one step closer or further from your goal. And asking yourself whether it helps you move forward is how you stay on track. Once you've learned to ask yourself this question, you'll realize that small daily actions can accumulate and make a big difference. I don't just ask this question in important moments, but also in small decisions every day. One morning, I asked myself whether I should spend time in an unimportant meeting or focus on solving a larger company issue. These are small yet strategic decisions. This question helps me prioritize correctly and focus on what truly matters. Life will never be easy, and you will face unforeseen challenges. But when you face those challenges, stop and ask yourself, does this help me move forward? If the answer is no, don't hesitate to change direction and adjust your strategy. What matters isn't how fast you go, but whether you're heading in the right direction. This question will help you stay clear-headed, preventing you from getting lost in the pursuit of success. Finally, remember that life isn't a straight line. It's a long journey with many twists and turns. If you don't regularly ask yourself the question, will this help me move forward, you'll easily get lost in insignificant events and lose sight of your bigger goal. Every step must have a purpose. Every action must be meaningful. So, stop and ask yourself every time you face a choice, will this help me move forward? The answer will guide you on the right path. Words are not only a means of conveying information, but also a powerful tool that helps you build your image in the eyes of others. Yes, what you say determines how you are perceived, not just by those around you, but also by yourself. When I started with SpaceX, Tesla, or any other project I pursued, I realized that my words weren't just about transmitting information, but also about defining myself, asserting my vision, and showcasing my abilities. Every time I spoke, I wasn't just talking, I was demonstrating commitment, responsibility, and ambition. One of the most important things I learned throughout my journey is that your words not only affect how others see you, but they also deeply influence your own self-awareness. If you talk about positive things, about overcoming difficulties, you not only make others see you as strong, but you will also believe in yourself more. On the other hand, if you constantly point out the problems and obstacles you're facing, you will gradually become the victim of your own words. Negative words not only drain your motivation, but also create a vicious cycle of helplessness. I've witnessed this firsthand in my work. When I introduced new ideas and ambitious projects like SpaceX or Tesla, not everyone understood, not everyone believed in my abilities. But I didn't let that doubt affect what I said. I always reminded myself that if I didn't believe in my vision, if I didn't believe in my capabilities, how could I convince others? I didn't just talk about what I wanted to do, I talked about how I would do it. My words weren't just to share plans, but to convey belief in feasibility, perseverance, and the ability to overcome challenges. In fact, talking about what you can and will do not only helps you build trust with others, but also creates positive energy that helps you overcome challenges. Every major success starts with strong, determined words. When you express confidence and determination in your words, you show that you're ready to take responsibility, face any issue, and never give up. That's how you build credibility and respect from those around you. But words aren't always easy. Sometimes you may feel uncertain, not strong enough to say what you truly want. And that's when you need to reflect on yourself. If you can't say what you want to do, if you can't express your vision, do you truly believe in your own ability? Are you ready for others to believe in you when you don't believe in yourself? Words are a tool to create influence, but they can only reach their full potential when you truly believe in what you say. Therefore, I want you to always remember that when you say something, make sure you truly believe in it. Don't just speak to impress. Don't just speak to gain others' agreement. Speak because you truly believe it's the right thing and you're fully committed to it. When you do this, others will sense the sincerity in your words, and that is the key to building trust, not only from others, but also from yourself. Finally, my advice is, be cautious with your words, for they have more power than you think. They not only shape how others perceive you, but also determine how you perceive yourself. Make sure that what you say reflects your vision, values, and commitment. Don't let doubt or fear make you say things that lack power. Instead, say what you truly believe in and commit to it. When you do this, you will not only create influence with others, but you will also create a powerful impact on yourself. Finally, remember that your words don't just determine how others perceive you, they also determine how you perceive yourself. If you don't believe in what you say, if you don't show confidence in your words, you won't go far. Make sure that what you say reflects your confidence, determination, and vision. When you do this, you'll find that not only will others trust you, but you'll trust yourself more. Words have great power, and you are the one who holds that power.